Very good. All right, we'll start with Steve on the left.
Yeah, Coach. Just a general question. You have experienced coordinators now with Arthur and Matt. 2 years ago, 2024, you had that with Chip. You were able to maybe take that CEO role a little bit. I know you're in preseason camp and your fingerprints on everything that's going on, but do you feel you'll have a chance to get back into that CEO type role this year with those two guys in charge?
I really feel strongly that we have a very good staff. And I feel like, it's important for the coordinators to lead their units. And, same thing with Rob Disher on special teams. I think that, when you look at who we have, there's experience there. And, we've talked about this before where it's my responsibility to make sure I'm doing the things that the head coach is supposed to do. And having, great people on staff allows me to do that. And I feel good that we have, an excellent staff. I think the camaraderie is good. And, the players feed off of the staff. So we just got done really with our first scrimmage, preseason game number 1. And so we'll evaluate the film and kind of, figure out where everybody's at, grade it, and look to get better. But we are absolutely in a race against time to get better. We've got to claw for every inch we possibly have. And I think having guys like Matt and Arthur who have experience of being in the NFL where every game comes down to the last play. That's just how it goes. And it's going to be like that, in many games we're at this year.
Cam on the right.
Ryan, obviously you mentioned coming into camp that the running backs were a position that you wanted to see a lot from, and coming out of your first scrimmage, just what have you seen from Isaiah Bowe, and just how much growth have you seen from them from day one to now?
Well, when you're not tackling, it's hard. We did do some of that today. I thought there was some really good runs in there, and I think that room is building depth. We'll see where it goes, but certainly Bo has had a very good start to camp, first week and a half. And, Jacoby's right there, and so is Isaiah. And then we're building depth behind that. But I think Coach Locke's plan is to make sure that we have 3 guys available. But so far, Bo has certainly stood out. And Jacoby and Isaiah are right there. And then behind them, legends learning how to play the position, but you certainly can see the talent. He had some big plays and explosive plays today. I think, if he continues to grow and get better and all those things, take care of the football, you can see what a weapon, he'll become for us. So excited about the room. Again, not where they need to be. We still got a couple more weeks to get there, but it's good to have a group that, has experience. And Jacoby doesn't have experience at Ohio State, but the other 2 do, and he's played a lot of football, and I think he had a good scrimmage today.
Steven on the right.
Now that you're 9 practices in, this is around the time that you felt like you wanted to have at least some more clarity about the offensive line. Can you just evaluate what you've seen from Ian, Josh, and Phil at this point? Do you feel like you're kind of zeroing in on who maybe that best 5 might be?
Yeah, I think maybe some of you guys, may have heard, Austin sort of was out for a couple of days, so it didn't make it as, streamlined as we would like to have been in terms of the evaluation. But those guys are battling right now, and we'll get Austin back here this week and continue to work through it. The good news is, we have depth, and there's multiple guys that we're going to feel good about putting in the game, but we're still not exactly where we need to be in terms of where everybody's going to be at.
Just a quick thought to that. How much of, I asked Tyler this in the spring, just how much of trying to figure out the offensive line is what's best for Austin Siereveld in terms of maximizing him versus maybe the other 3 pieces you're trying to evaluate as well?
I think we have to do what's best for Ohio State, and then we go from there. Now it's our job to put him in a position to be successful, but when you're looking at that, you take a lot of things into consideration. Take into consideration the run game, obviously the passing game, experience, how that move affects the other 4 guys on the line, the communication. I will say this, I think they're playing with a lot of confidence right now. They just came off that field feeling really good just about where they're at, the work that they're putting in, the communicating at a high level. And so, that part is good. And who ultimately and where in the first game, are going to be the 5 guys and where they're going to be. I think we still have to sort through that this week, but I think we all go to bed at night knowing that we're going to have enough. It's just how it all shakes.
Doug in the center.
Ryan, in Chicago, you mentioned that Chris Henry Jr. sort of had that physical, transformation that you talked about. What have you thought of what you've seen from Chris in this preseason camp?
Been very encouraged. I thought he came in took significant strides in the in the summer, and then came in with a different approach even than the spring. I thought he did a nice job in the spring, but when you go through 15 practices, the winter program, you're coming off of your senior year, you're supposed to be going to the prom, there's a lot going on there. And then to go through the summer, it's like now he's not a freshman anymore, and he doesn't look that way. He's made a lot of plays. He's learning the offense well. He's buying into special teams. He's playing physical. I'm excited to see where this goes for him.
Spencer on the right.
Ryan, it seems like this linebacker room a little bit like 24, where Peyton's like Cody, where he's played a lot, but now he's going to have to be a leader. What do you think of the linebacker room right now? Peyton and Riley and TJ coming along, and Christian there. Like, just your evaluation of the linebacker room so far.
Well, I'm actually going to start with TJ and Riley, because I think both of those guys are putting in a lot of good work. Steve Stove in there, and again, they're doing a good job on special teams, which is only going to lead to them playing on the field. They're showing up, watch the film, and see how they did in the live work today. And then Peyton and Christian have been solid. So, again, another room that we feel like we have depth in. And I think James feels that way. I think you will see us rotate guys and trying to figure out how all those pieces work. As Matt and James and everybody there on defense does a good job of making sure we put guys in the right position. And so we want to maximize their skill sets. All four of those guys sort of have different skill sets, which is good. And there's certain things they do the same, but they're into it. They're making the calls. They recognize plays quickly and diagnose plays quickly. They look good when they come off the bus, and so again, just 9 practices in, but excited about that room in terms of being able to play depth this season.
Adam on the right.
You talk about bringing an outside perspective with Arthur Smith coming in. I know you're only through 9 practices in fall camp, but I'm curious if there's one area where he was kind of eye-opening for you guys in the offensive room, where you guys, something clicked with that jumps out to you.
I think his resume speaks for itself, and when you walk in with that type of a resume, sort of like Matt did the year before, you have a certain level of credibility with the players and then with the coaches. And he knows what he wants, and he has a certain level of confidence when he walks in a room. And I think the guys have enjoyed that. I think that the room has good chemistry. I think he communicates well. I think some of the unit meetings he's doing with the offense, he's bringing everybody together with one voice, and they're feeling and feeding off his confidence.
Joey on the right.
How does Julian's experience show up when you're putting in new stuff with the new offensive coordinator in Arthur?
Well, he's had a good offseason in terms of really found his voice. He's very much more assertive even at this time last year, and that combined with his knowledge for what we're doing on offense. He and Billy spent a lot of time together, but so does Julian and Arthur, and so they are having a lot of fun together. I think and the fact that Arthur's going from Aaron Rodgers to Julian Sayin, and I think Julian sees what a great way to learn the game. When one of the best all-time quarterbacks was working with Arthur last year, and vice versa, and now there's just things that they get to share and experiences, and I think it's been great. But to me, it's more about how that offensive line and those receivers and those tight ends and running backs are going to play for him at the end of the day. He's the leader, and he's going to be the one that's going to have to make the play when the money's down in these big matchup games in the fourth quarter. And a big part of it, big part of being a quarterback is, those guys have to want to make the play or get that first down because of the quarterback. And he's doing a really good job of that. I think that they believe in him now, but we still got a lot of work to do. And but that's what the preseason's all about, is earning that and trying to put them in situations as a coach to see where they can continue to learn and grow in those areas.
Joe in the back.
Hey Ryan, with senior day moving up to week 1, can you share some of the thought about that adjustment?
Yeah, it first came to me from our administration as an idea, and we talked about it. Had long conversations about it. The traditions at Ohio State here are significant and very, very strong, and something that we all respect. And what we don't want to do is do anything that's going to disrupt any of those traditions. But when we look at all the things that go on that weekend, the way things have changed, there's some things that we thought about. And I think the first thing was if we want to keep that game, the much of that game, the focus on the game. And the more distractions we have, there's already enough distractions during that week. And so this was just one more thing that we felt like we could move. Then when we started to look at just, the way that college football is now, recognizing seniors, someone like Brandon Ennis is maybe a little different than Earl Little. And so we thought about maybe moving it up a week. And then we said, well, why don't we just recognize all the seniors at the beginning of the year, let them know how much we appreciate everything they've done, and then kind of move on with the season, and sort of a different way to look at it. And so what we did is we brought it to the seniors to see what their take on it was, because we didn't want to do it without their support. And I wasn't sure what to expect. They all were just nodding quickly and said, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea." So we went with it, and we think it's going to allow us opportunity to really, kind of recognize them early in the season, and then focus on the games.
Bill Landis in the center.
Ryan, what has Bo been doing specifically that makes you think he's had kind of a standout game so far?
Well, I think the first thing is, his reads and the way he's hitting the hole has really shown up. But I think he's doing a much better job at the second level. And we've talked about it before. Either running over him or you're running around and making a miss, and you're seeing that. It's showing up on film. It did not show up on film last year. We all know it. He knows he's been challenged. Coach Locke has been challenged, and so. Based on the habits he's creating, I think we're going to see that this year. Now, again, it's just practice, so it doesn't matter until he puts it in a game. But if he continues to keep building and practicing and stacking these practices the way he's doing it, it's going to show up in the game. And that's going to be a big part of who we are this year. We felt like, there was a lot of good there last year, but there was also a lot of football that we left on the field. And so a big point of emphasis that so far he's been responding to.
Austin on the right.
Ryan, you mentioned after day one that one of the position battles that you most wanted to watch was that backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Is that more of a challenge to Tavian, or is there more competition coming from Justin or Luke than maybe we would have anticipated going to camp?
I think, Luke, he got his black stripe off today. He's been really doing a great job. He's putting a lot of pressure on Tavian. He really is. He's been competing. He's been making plays. We'll see how he grades out. Coach Fessler grades everything. So that's been exciting to see him, come in with a certain work ethic, run the offense, at a pretty high level. So we'll kind of see how the rest of the camp plays out, but good to see him kind of step in and push Tavian.
Dan on the left.
Ryan, the kicking position, obviously a big emphasis for you guys this year. Just what have you seen from Connor and Marcelo, and where do you feel like you're at with that right now?
Yep. Connor has done a good job. He made a couple nice kicks for us today in some pressure spots that we want to challenge him with, and we'll continue to do that throughout camp. I think the consistency with the snap and the hold and the kick has been good, but now we just got to go put him in these situations in practice where there's a lot of pressure and see how he responds. His past would tell you that he will respond well, and so we've seen that so far in practice. But we'll see. Marcelo, has a really strong leg, and so it gives us an opportunity to have somebody to help with the kickoffs, and also long field goals at times. So still early in camp, but that's what he brings, a really strong leg to the table.
Tony Herman on the left.
Ryan, freshman class overall, how many do you think are going to play right now, and who are some of those guys that we should expect to see?
Well, it's like the conversation used to be who's going to redshirt, who isn't, and obviously that doesn't really come into play anymore. So the push is to get on special teams. So the more guys that can get on special teams and help us as the season goes on, the more we want to do that. So I think it's a great thing. Where in the past, some guys lose hope. I'm going to redshirt this year. That's not the case, and it's a long season. So, if I'm a freshman, I'm trying to get on the field. There's no more of these situations where, I'll get it next year. No, like urgency. You got to play. You got 5 to play 5. So, at the receiver, I'm not going to go through every position because I'll forget people, but you're certainly going to see some of those young receivers play. If Legend continues to improve, you're going to see him play. Let's see. On defense, Jay Timmons, is going to play. He's been doing a really good job. You're going to see some of the guys up front play. I'm missing some other guys, but there's some guys in the back end that'll play for sure. And then the question is like, all right, who can push on special teams? And then, I was just telling the story the other day. We were showing a play with Chris Olave. It was in the Indiana game. But it's funny, like these kids nowadays, like they know who Chris is, but they don't remember. It wasn't that long ago, in 18 when he blocks a punt late in the season and then goes on to catch 2 touchdown passes, and his career just takes off with special teams. And so the best players here have played special teams, especially when they were young. So when we put on film, you see Arvell, you see Sonny, you see Cody, you see all these really good players, Lathan, out there playing special teams. So that's going to be the push. And if you can do that, and we can trust you on special teams, then we can trust you playing offense and defense. So those are a couple names, and then we'll see where the rest of the guys show up.
Dave on the left.
I know you still need to watch the film, like you said, but what are some things that stood out to you the most during the scrimmage today?
Again, have to watch it a little bit and see exactly what it was. But it started raining out there, and I thought the offense responded well to that. It didn't really skip a beat. Had a couple nice sustained drives in there where usually that first scrimmage is sort of a disaster on offense. I think having some more experienced guys out there, we're a little bit further along than typically we would be. So that was good. There was some good physical play out there. On both sides of the ball. So we got what we want done that way, and we came out healthy. So those are the big things. Now we'll get on the film and figure out what we got.
Rob in the back on the right.
Yeah, Ryan, you lost 8 starters on defense. 3 of them went, I think, in the top 11 of the draft. How do you manage expectations versus being like reality? Do you allow yourself to say, well, there might be a drop off, or just, no, they have to meet the standard?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's no like a rebuilding of anything around here, as you know. So like that's the standard. The standard's the standard, and I think all the guys on the defensive staff and the players would tell you the same thing. They're expecting to be the best defense in the country, and same thing on offense. But that being said, it's a different group of guys, and it's one thing to play in that role where you're coming in and playing 15 to 20 snaps. Another thing to carry all the water and carry the burden of making the plays and the number of plays that it's going to require throughout the season. So I think guys are learning and playing into those roles, but the potential is there. And honestly, the experience is there, just not all together here at Ohio State. There's some guys who played football. We'll see, but it is like literally, I say it all the time, a race against time to get better. And, the coaches understand that. And so this will be a big week, I think, for the defense to see, where it can take the next step, where it can continue to improve. Because, to your point, there's no like, okay, well, we'll kind of figure this out and, get it figured out halfway through the season. It's not going to work that way. But there's nobody in the building that would say that. I think they all understand what needs to get done.
Dylan on the right.
Ryan, what are your thoughts been on the tight end position through camp thus far, and how that depth shaking out, and the guys that you feel like they're really pushing to solidify their places?
Yeah, depth, like you said. I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. You heard me say like some good, some bad. And when you're playing that position and you're in camp, it is a death march. I mean, you're banging in there like an offensive lineman. You're running routes like a receiver. You're protecting, like you're doing a lot of stuff. And there's a lot thrown at the tight ends. Like you have to handle high levels of information. You got the center, you got the quarterback, and then probably the tight end. I mean, those guys have to be on top of their stuff. So, it's easy to get worn down, but that can't happen. And they're going to come out the back end of this thing stronger as a group. But I think the question still remains: who are going to be the guys that we can count on to make the plays and do the job? And I think that's maybe another thing about the defense. It's like you have some good depth there, but like who's going to make the play? Who's going to be the guy that we count on when it matters the most? And I don't think we're there yet, but the good news is we have some different guys that are competing for those opportunities.
Stefan on the right.
Going back to the O-line you were talking about earlier with Austin missing a few practices, has that? I think back to 2024 when you guys had a lot of guys miss the spring or miss the preseason practices. Like, has that allowed some opportunity for Josh, Ian, Phil to maybe get some more reps and kind of try to solidify themselves as starters?
Yeah, it's not like it was that year with an illness where it was like just wild every day, But it has allowed more opportunity for guys to get reps and move guys around and see guys play multiple positions. So That's always good. And then they have to step up. We've had to see, at times Carter Lowe had to, play with the ones, and now he's blocking Kenyatta coming off the edge and, Bo coming off the edge. And so, that forces you to grow up quickly and figure out what you have. So, yeah, there's been some of that going on. But, I think we're going to get Austin back here soon and get back to work.
We've got two more. Brianna in the front.
You mentioned Jay Timmons. What in particular has impressed you about him, and how close is he to pushing for a starting position?
His ability to make plays. He's super competitive. He's edgy. He just has a knack for the game, and he's got really good instincts.
Go with Bill, last one.
Yeah, the three transferred defensive linemen, Quay, John, and James, what impact do you think they can have? What have you thought of their development so far?
Well, we need them to have a major impact. Yeah, we're counting on that. And there's been a lot of good. I think I'm interested to see what it looked like today when we were, some of these sustained drives, because when we watch the teamwork where you get 4 plays and you're out and the 2s come in and 4 plays, there's a lot of good there, a lot of good. But the question for defensive linemen is, can you consistently do it over an extended period of time and during a drive? And I'd like to see what that looks like today, but they're certainly more than capable, and we're counting on them. And I think that they understand that part of it, and have gotten really good with their strike and their hands, and have great attitudes.
Has one of the three emerged more than the other?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, they're all a little bit different. John is big, strong, and powerful. James is a little quicker, and very disruptive. And then Quay's a little bit more on the edge and pass rusher, can do some things in the flat. He's very versatile in what he does. Yeah. All right, guys, thanks. Yep.